let's talk about our first lunar base, because we kind of agree that we need
Sure.
to we need mass that isn't in Earth's gravity well, and we
Sure.
need it to be convenient and practical. And the moon is nice and close by. You can communicate with it, whatever it's like 6 minutes or something, the speed of light.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
so you can communicate well. You can get to it in 14 days, and it's got mass. Now, from the first blush, it doesn't look super attractive because there's a whole bunch of things missing. Got a lot of regolith, um, but I actually think that regolith gets you quite a long way. I mean, you can take this regolith, and there's amorite. I think is like one of the popular kinds up on the highlands, and you can smelt aluminium out of that, and you get as a byproduct silicon, calcium, and oxygen. So oxygen is great. That's going to come in very handy if you live in space. I mean, you can also make rocket fuel out of it, so that's good. Calcium is going to give you ceramics, which is very useful for building a whole bunch of things. Silicon is going to, that's going to be very useful for a lot of early stage electrical technology and a whole bunch of other things. And aluminium you can build things out of. So actually, even with the moon, even though we're talking about a very basic set of criteria, you actually get quite a lot of your early wins on something that basic.
Sure. Anorthite.
That's the one. Yeah.
So one thing to bear in mind about anorthite is that you can't really smelt it. I mean, you can, but on the context of a lunar base, we discussed this a little bit before, but the point smelting refers to, I'm sure you're speaking more like generically, like process it, but the way that you probably go about processing it, at least as I understand the people who are looking into this from a material science perspective, is through electrolysis.
Yes, to be fair, that's what I meant. Molten oxide
Sure.
electrolysis. Yep.
Sure. And then, of course, you don't even need to do that. It's actually possible to refine it in a kiln into actually very, very, very sturdy ceramics. We can already do that. And
does that get you your aluminium and your oxygen?
No. It produces an anorthite ceramic, which you can build out of directly.
Okay, so if you need a lot of ceramic, but it's very nice to have oxygen.
Of course.
So, yes. So you're going to want to do a combination of the both, but you can get lots and lots of ceramics, and also if you put a little bit more heat into it, it might be nice if we got fusion power up and running by then. If you've got a lot of energy to pump into this stuff, you could also get quite a lot of your early materials.
Yes. And of course, then you have ilmenite, which is iron, and titanium, which is actually more plentiful on the moon than it is on Earth, at least in terms of in the crust. And because you can magnetically separate it, you can just put, I don't know if you've ever seen the old World War II films with a tank with a flail on the front for blasting mines apart.
Yes.
You can use that. You can powder it, blow it, smash it down. Because of the low gravity, the dust will fly everywhere, and you can simply use a weak magnetic field to sift out magnetic particles.
Oh, that's clever. Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can just roam the surface, essentially sifting it. And then once you've depleted the surface, what you're left with is principally oxides and alumina and other things you can search for other materials. And ilmenite is relatively simple to process, again, by electrolysis.
So what does that get you?
Iron, oxygen, and titanium.
Okay. So there's plenty of titanium, is there?
Yes.
Okay, so look, with the process we've already talked about, was it ammonite? I forget now, but so
anorthite.
Anorthite. So you got your aluminum alloys, strong, lightweight, corrosive resistant. Build a lot of stuff out of it. You've got your calcium combined with your aluminium. That gets you housing holes, support trusses, a whole bunch of things you can build domes and useful stuff out. You got your silica, so you got your optics. Glass for your habitats, you've got lenses, you've got solar panels. Again,
you've got ceramics for concrete.
Yes. Yes. The calcium silicates, that's going to give you your landing pads and your shielding walls and all that kind of stuff. And a combination of a bunch of these is going to give you your heat shielding. So you've got a lot there with basically just moon rock. Problem is, that isn't going to get you full industrialization because you're still missing things like copper, for example. You can use aluminium for wiring, and we do on Earth very high voltage sometimes. Having copper would be extremely useful, and then you're going to want things like lithium, cobalt for batteries. You're going to need a little bit of high conductivity gold. So, have you thought around getting the spicier stuff?
For that sort of thing, the best places to look are the large igneous provinces. Those are more common on Mars, but there are remainders of them on the moon, which we can explore. The geological surveys of the moon, in terms of mineralogy, aren't particularly complete, but we do have reason to believe that at least in low concentrations, those materials are available, not concentrated into proper ores, but at least available in igneous rock all over the moon. And that igneous rock you can break down, you can sift. It would be expensive. It's like trying to extract iron from granite. You can do it, but it's unpleasant. You have to process a lot of material to get a small amount of iron, or plagioclase feldspar, for example. But it's perfectly practicable. But I think this circles back to the amount of copper you need to wire a house is a lot less than the amount of wood you need to build the house. And so that's the sort of thing where you can actually afford to ship that from Earth for quite a while longer. You can't afford to be sending up hull plates from Earth or fuel from Earth, but you can afford to send up a box of wires or a box of microchips.
That's a fair point, actually. So the things that we talked about that you can get from lunar regolith, you can build actually by bulk 99.9 something % of your early lunar habitats. If you then need to send up 100 tons of copper, well, just bloody do it then.
Yes, exactly. And which is more, you're already going to be having ships going back and forth because you need to transport people. When parts break, you need to figure out why. When you need to bring back samples because you can't do everything remotely, you're already going to have a huge amount of communication between those 2 points. I actually think there's a lot of money to be made in terms of buying. We talked about a futures market in terms of acceleration tolerance, change in orbital position in terms of delta V. You could probably develop a futures market simply in selling the excess capacity on missions to carry miscellanea, non-urgent cargo, which nevertheless needs to make that transit. A box of microcircuits for a particular filtration system, a certain amount of wire, rubber insulation. Vulcanized rubber would be very hard to produce there. That's something that you need a lot of time for, and which is more, you need insulators, which you have another problem, which is there are lots of things that are fine once they're in a moon base, but if you take them outside of the moon base and put them in a vacuum, even for a very brief period of time, they tend not to work anymore. LEDs. If you want to try and build LEDs on the moon, an LED factory is not a small thing. That's not easy to do, but nevertheless, LEDs die instantly the moment you expose them to vacuum.
Okay, I didn't know that. Right.
Yeah, so it's there's a wonderful scene in The Martian where he pulls out a laptop into the void without thinking about it, and the screen like that because all the LEDs burst. So
because there's just high pressure or something inside.
Well, just because an LED fundamentally relies on a set of environmental conditions. If the material inside the LED is suddenly exposed to a vastly lower atmosphere on the outside, it is going to burst. It's a sealed container. It's like
I suppose there's a flip side to that as well, in that everything we build because it's possible or practical to build on Earth. There may be an enormous amount of industrial applications that require, to make it feasible, vacuum or lower gravity. So we might
absolutely 3D printing.
Right. Okay. Tell me about that.
3D printing is limited because on Earth we have 1g of acceleration downwards, and that means that anything you want to build requires sprues, and those sprues then need to be removed. You have to add a machining step. Any engineer you'll ever talk to will tell you machining is most of the cost when it comes to metal, and with metal you can at least smelt and recycle all of that metal. If you machine down a piece of aluminium, you can smelt it all. But if you machine off plastic resin, it's very hard to repurpose that meaningfully. In fact, you basically can't. And so, you can, but with any plastic recycling, there is a certain proportion where after enough steps of recycling, it's like a recycling glass. After enough steps, you're just dealing in slag. You can recycle glass so many times before the soda ash in it begins to break down.
Okay, so So 3D printing is just fundamentally more viable in, was it low gravity?
Yes, because you don't need these huge sprues holding up the structure.
Okay. So
And
I mean,
so
we were going to circle back to AI, but let's suppose for a moment that we had it. If you've got robotics, AI, and 3D printing, and you've got all the materials on hand to start building your first dome cities, you could actually go a really long way really quickly with this stuff.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.